Here at Baylor, a collaboration worldwide, Harvard and Gallup, and all kinds of exciting things to study the concept of flourishing. And so I will hand it over to them and to Byron first to talk to us about AI and flourishing.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's a treat to be here today. And just to give you an idea of the agenda, I'll kick us off by giving you just an overview of the Global Flourishing Study, where we are at the moment. And then I'm going to pass it over to Matt Lee, who's going to share with you an exciting glimpse of what's ahead. And then Matt Wilson's going to give you a demo of something that we're working on right now in terms of application of what we're learning from the Global Flourishing Study and with the use of AI. And so you want to advance that one slide? So the Global Flourishing Study, some of you know a lot about it, some of you never heard about it. This is a study that was launched here at Baylor in 2021. And it's the largest study of its kind ever conducted, where we're tracking over 200,000 people around the world. It's a longitudinal design in that we're following these same people for 5 years, doing surveys every year with these same people. It's on all 6 continents, populated continents, in about 40 different languages. It's been a Herculean effort to do something like this. Before this, the largest countrywide study was about 10,000 people. So that gives you an idea of the scope of the project. Let's see, yeah, and it represents about 64% of the world's population. For those of you that are quantitative people, it's rare when you can get representative samples at the country level, and especially in a longitudinal design. So this sets us apart from most other previous studies. It's on human flourishing. And what is human flourishing? Maybe everybody has their own definition of human flourishing, but we look at 6 domains, and these are the domains. If you're doing well in all of these areas of your life, you could argue that that would be an example of what it means to flourish or to live the good life, a life well lived, or what is described in John 10:10 when Jesus talks about the abundant life. That's kind of what we're aiming at with these different domains: physical health, mental health, character and virtue, close social relationships, financial security, character and virtue. With this data, which became available I'm trying to remember when the first data rolled out, but we released our first wave of papers on April the 30th of last year. We released about 37 papers on that date in a special collection with the Nature portfolio of journals. And this just gives you an idea of the topics that are covered in our papers. So each of these reflects a paper from the Global Flourishing Study, and about another 65 on top of that were all published last year, just in the year of 2025. In the Nature journals. And if you just go one more slide, Matt. So this just gives you the piece that was published in Nature. The previous largest special collection of papers that they have published was about 8 papers with the Genome Project, a decade plus earlier. So it is an unprecedented rollout of studies. We have a team of about 50 plus scholars that are working on this between Baylor and Harvard, and in partnership with the Center for Open Science. So it is an open science project. This too is kind of a landmark for a study of this size to be open access, which means you all have access to this data at the same time that we do. We have just wrapped up data collection for Wave 3. We're writing papers from Wave 2, and Wave 3 data will be released in about a week. And so we'll transition to Wave 3. And again, the Center for Open Science is our partner. We'll give you the website. In fact, Matt, we'll just advance it one slide. And there you can go to the Center for Open website if you are interested in pre-registering to have a glimpse of the data yourselves. And then the Nature code there takes you to the special collection So if you click on that, you'll see about 70 papers at the moment. We've published another 20 to 30 papers in other outlets outside of the Nature portfolio. And then there's the GFS website. It's a standalone website apart from Baylor and apart from Harvard. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my good friend and close colleague, Matt Lee, who will take us down the home stretch. Matt.
Thank you, Byron. And I guess this is just for the video, so I don't hear. But let me know if I need to speak louder. So one of the points of this session is to give you a sense of what the Global Flourishing Study is, and then how we're beginning to think about applying some of the insights we're getting from the study, especially as it relates to AI. So Matt Wilson will take us down the home stretch, but I will kind of set it up, I hope. And by the way, I had intended to not use any minimal tech. I was going to print out my remarks so that you wouldn't have to look at a screen for a few minutes. But my printer broke, so I'm looking at a screen. Most conversations about artificial intelligence in the workplace start with the same question: what can it do? I start with a different one. That's because there's a distinction between communication and communion. AI is extraordinary at communication, moving information, coordinating tasks, generating summaries, managing workflows. It can do that better than any of us. But communion is the experience of genuinely connecting with others around a shared purpose, even a sacred purpose, where we are all changed at the core of our being by the encounter. This is what actually produces excellence at work. And so we've worked with a number of organizational partners, both corporate businesses, but also nonprofits and even educational and government organizations. And many of them are saying the same kind of thing, that essentially it's the deep shared trust that teams have that produces good outcomes. Without, sometimes they use the word communion, sometimes they don't, but without this kind of communication that goes beyond mere content delivery, there are no innovations, there are no breakthroughs, there are no discoveries. And so I'm reminded of a conversation I had with Peter Senge a few years ago. He wrote this book, The Fifth Discipline, which some leadership people know about, but he was studying Hewlett-Packard, and there was a lot of innovation in the printer division. By the way, it was a Hewlett-Packard printer that died on me today. So I'm just noticing that. That's delicious. But he said that, you know, when they were coming up with all these innovations that really launched them to the head of the marketplace for printers, it wasn't that management organized teams that came up with this. It wasn't that it was most of the employees. It was a handful of employees in a few, what he calls, networks of loving relations. And why is that? Because if I have a kind of crazy idea, I may not share it unless I trust you. Because I might get fired, I might get ridiculed. If I have a really good idea, I may not share it because I might be concerned that you'll steal it. So only when you have this deep kind of relational field can you feel comfortable being fully creative. And that emerges out of what Senge calls networks of loving relations. And another example, we've worked with a company for a few years now, where they did a kind of summary statement and said that when love is present in the workplace, it provides the conditions for flourishing. So it's interesting to me that in a business company that they would be using the language of agency to describe love. It is love that has the agency, and we participate in that. How do we come to participate in that? In this company, it was because for years, the CEO had believed that workers should care about each other, genuinely care about each other. But it wasn't happening just because he told them you should care about each other. So they started developing skills that would help, that would enable people to care about each other. And one skill that his leadership team suggested to him was listening, deep listening. And so they presented that this is one of the skills we think is really foundational. And the CEO said, that's a bad idea, we're not doing that. And so they left and they thought about it and they came back and they said, we've outvoted you, we're doing it. And maybe you need to take this course. So they started really helping people learn how to pay attention, to be fully present, to listen to each other, and then as a next step, to share gratitude for each other. So they would start their meetings by saying, let's go around the room and each of us tell one story about how someone in this room has helped us in the last week. And this created the relational conditions that really turned the business around. The business was struggling, and now they have over 150 subsidiaries around the world. Oftentimes they go into a bidding war with other groups that are buying out, acquiring companies, and they go in intentionally with the lowest bid. And they say, if you want the people that you have worked for you for all these years to flourish after you're gone, accept our bid. If you just want to make the most money, accept the other bids. And then they start talking about how they have helped people to care for each other through listening, through expressing gratitude, through what we could say is edging up to communion. Because I think they do, the CEO does feel like this was a divine revelation that helped him to unlearn much of what he learned in his MBA program. And to bring that kind of spirit to, not that people are numbers in a spreadsheet, but that everybody is someone's precious child and a precious child of God. And to bring that into every interaction within the organization. It just made a huge difference. So there's no tension between operational excellence and creating the conditions of people caring for each other and even experiencing a taste of communion rather than just communicating content. Our recently published volume with Oxford University Press, titled Leadership for Flourishing, describes the importance of the quality of this relational field in organizations. It's an edited book, so people are coming at it from different perspectives. But in one case, a silver medalist on the rowing team for the UK talks about healthy and unhealthy competition and how we could think about not the short win, getting the medal, but the long win of human development. What kind of people are we becoming through our competitive sports? And she now does consulting for businesses and does all kinds of diplomacy work and other things. So the relational field within organizations is invisible but consequential to how people connect within teams, within the broader company, and within broader institutions. Some organizations hum with this high quality relational field. Others, despite impressive efficiency metrics, feel very hollow. And you can take the temperature of any group very quickly. You go into a meeting, you can see if people feel safe and are able to express really creative ideas because they know they'll be supported unconditionally. And you can tell when that's not the case very quickly. So my question is, not going back to what I started with, not what can AI do, but what happens to the quality of what an organization produces when the people inside it are deeply connected with each other and deeply connected to a purpose that touches their deepest sense of who they are. Not just productivity, not just employee satisfaction, but the actual excellence of the thing produced. The product, the service, the outcome. Is it qualitatively different when it emerges from a team operating in genuine relational depth versus one that's merely well managed? So how does AI play into this? In a second, I'll talk about that. We know from Gallup survey data, and we're working with Gallup on the Global Flourishing Study, but of course they've done many other surveys, including the Gallup World Poll, from their data throughout the world, that only about 20% of workers are engaged in what they do at work, in the sense of being passionate about what they're doing, feeling cared about at work, and being able to use their gifts and strengths. Unless you have all of those conditions met, you're not going to get creative innovation. You're going to get people phoning it in or quiet quitting or whatever the latest buzzword is. So only 2 out of 10 globally are engaged. That means that others are less than that. 62% are indifferent to what they're doing at work. So there's a lot of lost energy, a lot of energy being drained out of social systems, including business organizations, because people are generally indifferent, phoning it in. 18% are miserable. And that means they're trying to sabotage what the organization is doing. I don't like it here, I want this place destroyed, and here are the wrenches that I'm throwing into the machine to do that. So in fact, again, Gallup data, half of the world's workers do not really know what is expected of them at work. Less than a third use their strengths, and millions of people die every year from work-related accidents and diseases, many more from work-related stress. It's no surprise that heart attacks increase on Monday morning. And so now AI enters the mix. There's lots of wailing and gnashing of teeth about AI, but my point is the baseline's not that great. So what are we protecting here? So I was flying back from Canada yesterday, and I saw this in the newsstand, and I picked it up. I thought it was a nice cover that I could show for my talk today. This shows a robot destroying the world, and two human beings saying, on the other hand, I've never been more productive. So there's a lot of existential angst around AI. It's going to transform jobs, and yeah, I hope it will. And I hope that Matt can show us some of the ways that we can begin to transform. So this cover story on the AI and the future of work quotes leaders from some of the largest employers in the world, and also leaders from the companies developing these cutting-edge AI agents. And they're all saying that mass layoffs are inevitable. And so this has direct implications for human flourishing. One reason that this is the case is that a lot of businesses have invested a lot of money in AI without yet generating much net revenue. So there's pressure on leadership to cut costs in order to return investment for shareholders. You promised the world, and we're seeing, flat profits. So what can they do? Well, one thing they can do is to fire people. And so that's starting to happen. We're stuck, but one thing we can always do is fire people. This fails to recognize the power of the relational field in any organization. Mass layoffs do not inspire trust and creativity that are necessary for innovation and ultimately economic sustainability. So even if it looks like a short-term victory, in the long run, you lose the war to other competitors who are not engaging in mass layoffs because they've maintained that relational space where communion is possible. Given how problematic the status quo is, we can see AI as an opportunity to create greater opportunities to flourish at work. Whereas AI ethics centers focus on preventing harm around bias, surveillance, and displacement, and management consultancies are focusing on implementation, faster, cheaper, more. We are beginning to ask, drawing on insights from the Global Flourishing Study, what both of those approaches miss. How do we ensure that the human capacities that AI cannot replicate, like deep trust, shared calling, and the kind of collaboration that produces genuinely excellent work, occupy the center of organizational life? Now, one of the things we've learned from the Global Flourishing Study is that in many cases, the high-income countries that have the greatest economic development are not the ones that are flourishing the most. It's often the middle-income countries, because of the prioritization of relationships, prioritizing sacred meaning, often through regular religious service, and these other factors that we call the relational cluster are really leading the way in terms of flourishing. And so we've, in some sense, sacrificed a bit of our flourishing for economic development. But again, AI cannot replicate deep trust, shared calling, and this kind of relational field that produces genuinely excellent work. AI can master content analysis, delivery, and communication, but only humans are capable of communion, and communion is the heart of excellence. Organizations investing in relational depth retain employees, and score higher on engagement surveys. But more importantly, we're starting to appreciate that they do build better products. They serve customers in a more meaningful way. One CEO that I've talked with a lot lately has said that they used to have three legs of their stool. One was taking care of the customer, one was taking care of the business, and the other was taking care of the employees. And it was taking care of the customer that was the North Star. And they were doing okay. But then they were inspired by another business to be more relational, and they shifted their North Star to taking care of the workers. And when they did that, the workers took care of the customers and the business much better. So they said it was kind of paradoxical that we were spending all this time and effort in doing something that didn't seem directly related to the financial bottom line, but now they're on an acquiring spree as well. People want to be folded underneath them because they want that relational engagement, that deep communion. So the relational field is key, and the Harvard study of adult development has followed people for 8 decades. Followed the same individual for 8 decades, and now they're children. And a former director put the central finding very bluntly: happiness equals love, full stop. And if you haven't paid attention to the relational conditions in your life, you could have career success, you could have all sorts of fame and fortune, but you are not going to be happy. It's the relational conditions that make the difference. Happiness equals love, full stop. And again, we're seeing this in the Global Flourishing study with those relational cluster variables being among the strongest predictors of the flourishing metric that Byron was just talking about. Some workplaces know this intuitively. Others have a CEO who's had a divine revelation and has woken up to this fact. We call them ecosystems of sacred hospitality. Whether they are overtly religious or not, they are treating the people within the organization as if they are of infinite value, as if they have inherent dignity, as if they are children of God. One of our corporate partners describes the integration of economic vitality and human vitality. Some groups see these as separate. If we're going to expand human vitality, it comes at an economic cost. Others understand that you get greater economic vitality when you pay deep attention to human vitality. And another says operational effectiveness is directly related to love and care. So everyone is talking about what AI can do. Almost no one is studying what happens to the quality of human relating when AI enters the room, and what that means for everything the organization is trying to accomplish. Does it get in the way of communion, or does it help people feel more closely connected and work together better as teams in a vibrant space of trust for a deep purpose? That's the gap that we're in, and we're launching the CARE initiative to address it. CARE stands for Calling, AI, and Relational Employment. AI can be deployed in the service of this work, but it cannot replace the heart of organizational effectiveness, which is love. I can end on that high note of possibility, but I will instead remind...
I'm sorry, do you mind repeating the acronym CARE?
Oh, CARE, yeah. CARE is calling, and then AI, and then relational employment. Good, thank you. So I was going to end on that high note of possibility, but that's not my style. I will instead remind us of the seriousness of our moment. And this is why my colleague Matt's presentation in a moment is so important. First, many of the people leading the AI revolution are terrified by the implications of what they are creating. Terrified is the word used by an economist in this article in The Atlantic to describe his feelings and the feelings of those he works with in AI labs on the West Coast. Terrified because, and I will quote the article here, mass job loss doesn't just mean unemployment. It means cascading defaults, shrinking consumer demand, and the kind of self-reinforcing downturn that can transform a shock into a crisis, and a crisis into the decline of an empire. I would go further and hypothesize that there's an implicit terror in imagining what AI might do to the relational field at work and beyond if we don't keep the North Star on communion. And fortunately, Matt Wilson is here to save the day.
Human Flourishing programs work. And we ended up deciding to build it right into the learning management system because students are only going to go to so many sites and go back to so many sites. After taking the Flourishing study on the original Flourishing app, never went back to it, even with the emails that were sent to me to go back. So I'm wondering, have you considered if it's an institutional priority to promote student flourishing at Baylor, why wouldn't you build it into the learning management system and have required or optional assignments and have it just in their face where they already go every single day?
So I love that idea, and we're currently working with Student Life on trying to figure out how do we have flourishing at Baylor. And this is one of the things that we're talking about. Turns out that right now there's something like, I don't know, half or a dozen different survey points that students are getting hit with, and a lot of people don't even know. So us even doing this is actually bringing those people together and a kind of a dialogue around that. So I think we'd love to do that, of course, but we're just at really early stages with this. The other thing is, that I would say is, we're still, I mean, this is very much still a pilot, so it goes live with Trilith sort of kind of towards the end of this month. I mean, one thing I don't actually know is what are people in real context, what are they going to say? Like, how vulnerable are they going to be? How much information are they going to give us? But yeah, we would love to do that.
I want it for my son who's a sophomore, so please hurry on.
Okay.
Well, one opportunity I see is to fold it into learning communities of one. I mean, there's formal learning communities and there's sort of informal things, but if a number of people in the learning community, students are doing this together, they don't have to share their scores or compare each other on their scores, but what advice did you get about improving this thing? Oh, you're doing that, let me do that with you. That's where it becomes part of the lifestyle. If you have to do it on your own, the data are very clear that people drop off pretty quickly. So we're social creatures. So I say, like, it's not just about, and Matt said this too in a different way, but not just about communicating that there's this content out there, but how are you creating opportunities for communion?
While we're waiting for the next question, oh, there's a question.
Okay. Yeah, this is kind of just a question about why we think we're having this issue with flourishing now. Has it always been that way? Because I look back at my grandfather who was born in the 1800s, my father that was born in 1927, and I can't imagine, and maybe I just don't know, that they had this issue like, oh, I'm not flourishing, or I'm not happy. Was it because maybe they had smaller communities, that they were closer? Well, what changed, or am I just did I miss it? And there was all this angst back then, and yeah, they were too busy working, right?
I think these are questions that have been asked for ever since humans have been on the planet, but I think Tyler really did do us a service by creating something, a common language that we could all agree on. Those domains are universally desired. No one wants to do bad on any of those, right? But to be able to validate something just really hasn't happened until more contemporary times. And so we're kind of riding that wave of a common language with measurement and assessment. So, but these are age-old issues, certainly not new. And but
yeah, I mean, I guess maybe did they score higher back then just because they were farmers? Yes, of course, I'm feeding my family. Of course, that's meaning, and I had friends because I was a community. I mean, is that it, or?
We're going to find out because we're doing longitudinal work now, so we are tracking people over time. Regrettably, the government, if you look at all the federal agencies in Washington, we don't track flourishing. We never have. And so you could say, well, why haven't we? Why wouldn't we want to know how people are doing in all areas of their life? But we have invested a lot of money in collecting data on economics because so many people have thought economics control everything. And so I would argue that we've missed a lot of opportunities to do some important work that's been necessary. But I was going to ask you a question. So you, Matt and I do a lot of criminological work, and we like to talk about the old self and the new self. So for people that have gone down a bad path and they go through a process where they're rehabilitated, they were a drug addict and now they're sober, and so they're able to look at their old life and now their new life, but we also are interested in the future self. Not just the new life that I now have, but the life that I really aspire to. And you mentioned it as an exercise. And so I think that really is something that could be fruitful. Where do I want to be, even as an 18-year-old? Where are my sights set? And then to be able to go back and look to see what I said. I think this is true in our spiritual journey too. Am I happy today with where I am spiritually? And where do I want to be in the future? And then to see how close am I making progress toward that goal? So if this tool could help in that regard, it would be a plus.
Yeah. Well, he had me sweating there for a second. You don't want to be asked a question by your boss in front of 50 people. But it was really more of a product suggestion, which I definitely love.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple hands, so.
One here, one here.
All right, so who first?
I'm happy you.
I saw yours first.
Okay.
Earlier.
I'd like to continue with the thought experiment that was raised about the idea of the farmer in a different time. And my question has to do with localization. In my ministry context, I have a lot of people who have multiple identities of religious belonging. I have a lot of students who would not claim Christian ways of knowing and relationships to emotions. And a lot of what I saw, the specific example I give, my Buddhist students wouldn't really know how to dialogue on a graded scale of 0 to 10 with the notion of emotion as something that is positive, as something to be evaluated in a way of good or bad. A lot of them would say they just are. So I wonder, for workplace contexts, since that's where this tool is designed for, to the best that I understand your presentation, what was the data gathering component like in contexts where maybe there were more religious and cultural considerations beyond Christianity, say like indigenous traditions, non-Western traditions, etc.
Well, as you know, most of the research is done in the West, and most of the research is done on Christian samples. This study is different.
Yeah.
So we are studying Buddhists, and we're studying atheists, and we're studying Muslims, and we're studying Christians and Jews, and all variations of those. And so we're actively doing that. We've published a ton of papers already. So context is huge. And so take advantage of that QR code, and you'll get just a glimpse of what we're looking at. So this is one of the first studies to look at all the great world religions and not just focus on Christianity.
Well, and just to follow up with what Byron shared, there was a cognitive interviewing process around the world to see how the questions were understood within different contexts. And there's a report, I think, that can also be accessed that describes that process and some of what emerged there. So we don't want to discount the different ways of framing and evaluating, but it seemed like the questions that we ended up with were the ones that performed well in the cognitive interview process.
And Indonesia comes out ranked #1 in the world, which is a Muslim majority country. So the items did hold.
And also still in the same spirituality tree, like that's still very much an Abrahamic faith tradition formed in the same relationships to emotional.
I think you'll see once you look at the items that we've used, so if we're doing a survey, which we did in Israel, the question is designed knowing that most of the people that are taking that survey come from a Jewish background. So we try to be sensitive to all of that. The translation process was so massive, we published a book on it. It's 1,000 pages long, because words like belonging, which are maybe a word that you all would understand, don't translate really well in certain contexts. So we had to spend so much time and effort just doing the translation work. So we have thought, I mean, in India, we have 11 different languages that our survey's been translated into. And so the cognitive interviewing really did help us go back, revisit it, try it again, go back, revisit it, try it again. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so just a kind of funny thought. Many of the conferences here are about AI and flourishing and whether or not we can flourish with AI or not. And here we are using AI to measure flourishing, and in some sense, that might itself not contribute to flourishing. You know what I'm saying? So I just throw that out there, and I think the antidote to that is community, because there's a lot of talk about empathy and emotion and connection with AI bots that show compassion and care, which they can't, and they don't. They're just machines. But we want them to, and so how does that help us with isolation and all that? So if you can stem that, and I think it's community, and I think I've seen this done. I've seen this done with other products like this, where they actually have a human coach who sits behind, who takes us in. The AI is doing all their analysis, but there's still a real human there, and accountability and a relationship with the person taking the survey. So I do want to get back on because this person's expecting me to get back on, kind of thing. So I don't know if that's something that would factor in. I mean, you'd have to pay someone or a team and train them how to become flourishing coaches. But this would be, I think, a way to avoid maybe that I don't know, whatever that is. Real quick question too is, that's just a comment. I just thought, the flourishing, the national benchmark, is that good? I mean, do we know that all those benchmarks means that those people are actually flourishing? So
It's purely descriptive. That's the
yeah.
Bell curve.
That's just that when you average, we have like, I think there's 38,000 people in the US sample. And so that's the average on each question of the 38,000, on average, how people answer.
And we can adjust it for age too. So if it's a young person, we could do the average or lower for young.
Sure, yeah.
So would there be a metric that you could show to say what is kind of like, what is considered flourishing in that? Say you're here at 6 point whatever, but really you know, we know that 7.5 is, I mean, there's nothing like that, right?
No, that's impossible.
It's impossible. Yeah.
It's relative to your baseline. So where do you start, where do you go?
Gotcha.
Do things improve or do things fall off? And it's the same thing with brain health metrics. They don't want to tell people your brain's not healthy. Your brain is what it is. Does it get better or does it get worse? Because then it creates this anxiety and other stuff. So yeah. So there's a debate about whether to include the benchmarks.
Yeah.
Are the benchmarks helpful? Like, am I competing with my friend? Am I competing with the world? Am I competing with the United States? I think if it's in service of deepening a sense of communion as part of a lifestyle, then I think it's very good. And if it's a substitute for any of that, then it's going to be bad. Is my own.
It was kind of a follow-up on the comment there was my question that I had, a couple of questions, but the idea of having an AI bot who pretends to empathize with the person who's taking the survey, is that being seen to bias information in any way as far as data gathering goes, as opposed to a survey set of questions that is just simply a survey set of questions? Does that question make sense? When I start to build a belief that it trusts me, it knows me, it's feeling sorry for me,
Yeah.
does that at all bias the results that you get in it, as opposed to the same questions being asked in another way that is very transactional?
I don't know that we have an answer to that question. I think it's a really interesting research question. Once we have, 1,000+ people take this, we're recording everything that happens. So we know what the AI follow-up was. We know what you said. we know what the empathetic response was. So, you know, we capture all that data, but yeah, I don't.
Yeah, just to be clear, the Global Flourishing study is not using AI.
Yeah.
You know, those are actual interviews that people have had. And what you're seeing is a demonstration of something that's been created in the last 3 weeks. Okay? There is no data. You're getting a sneak preview of something that Max showed us about a week and a half ago. So, so I think, because you said, what is your data showing? There's no data on this.
No, I don't think that's what my data showing. I see is there research that shows the difference between something that is empathetic in its response versus something that's just transactional in its response. So I wasn't meaning to say anything about that. It was just, has it been?
My hypothesis would be we would get better, deeper levels of insight about you and what's really making you flourish if you felt like, oh, this thing's at least, it heard me. It's empathizing. I mean, I feel listened to, so I'm going to give a little bit more.
Can I then build on that a little bit, go back to Matt's presentation when you were talking, and I think you were talking about AI in the workplace and how trust, for example, is super important. And as we outsource human function into an AI function, that we may get this breakdown and loss of trust within the workplace. I may misrepresent you, I didn't want to, but I think that's what you were saying. My wondering is, in several of the sessions that I've been to over the last day or so, they talk a lot about this intimate relationship that young people have created with AI, and that intimate relationship for me would probably be personified as trust happening in that space between it. There's a new group of people, and this is where I'm wondering, does that become transferable back into the workplace? We don't see it in the workplace, but the very thing that you were talking about, at risk at the workplace of trust, if people are growing up in their younger ages building high trust intimate relationships with AI bots, does that then transfer through to the workplace? And maybe it worries me.
Yeah, I share that concern because you're conditioned to relate to an AI agent as if it is more than a machine. And it mirrors or mimics that it is more than a machine. So then, would that be just as deeply satisfying to go into a workplace where instead of sitting around a conference table, you're brainstorming with human beings, you're just working with an AI agent? For me, the answer is clearly no. But for young people conditioned in a different way, that's an empirical question that I don't know that anyone's researched that, but it's a concern.
And then is there an irony that the basis for this current survey is trying to create a trust relationship because it will give better results?
Well, I think it's the purpose that it's used for. So if it's helping people who are lonely or disconnected or whatever, you know, one thing you could say is that, in the response, my faith is important to me. Okay, how often do you go to church? Because we find in our surveys around the world that religious service attendance is a strong predictor of flourishing, independent of all the other things. So if then the response is, well, how often do you go to church? Not that often. Oh, is that important to you? Yes, it is. Well, would you consider going to church? Then it's not the AI fixing anything. It's just kind of that nudge based on what we know empirically to be effective to get that person re-engaged with the human community and not using the AI as a substitute.
I'd like to say one more thing to that.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of, I mean, I get your concern, and I feel like it's a little bit of those overly negative views. I view this as like a really positive way of leveraging AI to, otherwise, what would it take? It would take a human interview. You know, it would take a face-to-face interview, and we've done a lot of that, and it costs $55 million. So, like, this is a way to leverage what AI has in order to interview you and find out what's really going on in your life, and it's a way to do it at scale for very cheaply. You know, I mean, for $15 per million tokens, I can use the top AI model. Yeah. And so.
And I'm not saying I'm against it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to reconcile.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've got a joke comment, which is actually that's where we're going to get all the interviewers from the jobs that get laid off by AI. They can do all the interviewing. But yeah, I think there's an aspect of I worked with some digital evangelism ministries where they're trying to go after young folks and that would never, you know, they're always online, or you know, and they're never would step foot in a church. They don't know many Christian friends. We're trying to get to them through technology, social media ads, to interrupt them, to then pull them in for a conversation with a chat person online, and then hopefully connect them with a church or some other organization. So sometimes we have to go to the technology world to catch them, to interrupt them, and then try to bring them in. So you know, I applaud this approach for using AI, because your end goal is to connect them with the right community, right? And that's the key.
Right here and then right here.
Yeah, actually, I just would like to say my appreciation. It's so simple, and just a couple questions, and then you can, you know, come up so many understandings of the persons, and the design is pretty good, because like it does not touch on those cultural issues or ethic issues, and basically it's just a basic human needs that you are asking. And so, like one thing I would like to say though, like you collect all the data, right? So you can do the statistic by age, by geographic, you know, like the location and all that, and so that people can tell more, like which country or like which regions like it has more, like have higher numbers of the flourishing and that kind of things, right? And so like I just would like to know, like when you like open this like survey, you know, to the public, will you back it up by say the university, like the people knows that, oh yeah, this is done by Baylor universities, and so it's a Christian growth. And that may have some kinds of effects to how people receive it though, right?
Not quite sure if I understand. Well, it's a joint project with Harvard as well,
okay.
And Gallup's the one collecting.
So are you talking about what I demoed, or
yeah,
the global
what you demo
flourishing
is a survey, right?
Yeah.
But like the branding or the
yeah.
the
Yeah, you know, that's something that we're wrestling with. Is so selfishly, we'd love the landing page that you go to be branded our institute and Baylor, and so we could gain a little bit of like, you know, traction, quote unquote. But it's easily done to have the landing page just be, you know, First Baptist Church or, you know, some nonprofit or whatever, because you're getting a link from that organization so we're not married to the brand.
Or you can partner with any different organizations, and then all the data goes back to your central repositories, and then you can have more accurate like understanding.
Yeah, and there's one kind of part of the vision that I don't think came out, which I have, and this goes back to Matt's comment on the purpose. So the purpose is to connect people to community, to connect people to real resources, but there's a behind the scenes purpose, and if you can imagine a local church that they've got 500 people that all take this, and maybe they've put in whatever their current offering of resources is. You know, they have life groups, and they have a potluck, and they have a parenting class, and they whatever they have, right? They've put that in there. But our hope is that this would surface you know, we can go back in and have the AI analyze, well, what are the real insights that of where people are struggling, and then have the church leadership say, oh wow, we need to develop resources to meet these needs that we didn't even know our congregation had. And so that's another, you know, good reason to try to surface that sort of double data.
And I think this might be, unless it's quick, the last
quick.
question.
Okay.
If it's
Real
quick,
quick.
then you're right there. Yeah.
It started with a small thing I noticed while taking the survey. There was us and we language, and there was you and me language. And so that, in my mind, I'm thinking, if I'm not buying something, then I might be the products. So help us understand was one of the phraseology of the question.
Okay.
Like, who's us? You know, so it casts doubt, goes back to this idea of trust. How's this data going to be used? So it's more of an observation, and also kind of illuminates the just the series of challenges you're facing in trying to put this together, so.
Oh, yeah, I mean, one thing that we've considered, don't have a finalized opinion on, is should we personify that, hi, I'm Alexa, your AI assistant, I'm gonna be guiding you through the, and then talk like I'm a person. Well, obviously there's a lot of concerns raised at this type of a conference of doing that kind of thing, but I think it's better user experience, frankly. Yeah, there's tons of, but yeah, thank you. I'll have to go back through and look at that. All right, well.
Oh, this is our last one right here.
Oh, really? Okay.
Dr. Johnson, Matt's super thankful for all three of you and your work and your team with the Global Human Flourishing Study. Kind of the question that I have is just reflecting on, you have a room full of people, you're recording this, and systems across higher education that implementing something like this could take some time. How would you advise, as we're reflecting on scaling, utilizing a tool like this across higher education on a global scale? How can we leave this space and think about how we start to have those conversations with leadership, with departments, with deans of student life, now as you're reflecting on the work that you're doing here at Baylor with that sample?
One of the things you could do sooner versus later is go to the Human Flourishing Program website at Harvard, where they have an academic initiative that is partnering right now with colleges all across the country, providing some tools. That might be a good thing if you're looking for something right now. Our big priority is to continue to publish papers from the Global Flourishing Study. That's our #1 priority. And we have a team just going around the clock right now. And but we don't want to neglect something like this, because we're always asked, where's your toolkit? I mean, toolkit, we're trying to publish papers. Toolkit. And but it appears, if you're not careful, that you don't care. What's the tangible product? We don't care about the 100 papers. But Baylor cares about that. We care about advancing knowledge that can be used by policymakers, but ultimately people want something that's, that they can read and that's lay friendly, right? So we have a big project that we're doing with churches now, trying to help churches flourish, which is a really exciting project in 12 churches, but I could imagine it being 10,000 churches in the next few years. So we are trying to do things that are applied, but first we want to kind of build a foundation to be able to point to that's credible and valid and published in peer-reviewed outlets. So that's kind of been job one up until just recently. I mean, Matt, we hired in the fall. Yeah. So I mean, we've come to Matt to say, help us figure out things that we haven't really given much thought to.
Well, let's thank our panel so much.